Joyce, my friend, you have talked me off many a ledge when it comes to my ire and my anger. This is bullshit. And I am still angry about it because Merchan is considering a sentence of an unconditional discharge, as I just noted for our viewers. No jail time, no probation. Why not just sentence him for the 34 felonies that a jury found him guilty for and just hold it in abeyance until he's done serving in the Oval Office?
So let me try to talk you off the ledge on this one a little bit, Katie, and we'll see if it works. I think what the judge is doing here is he's trying to send a final message about the rule of law to a country that disregarded it when it voted to re-elect Donald Trump. And here's the technical legal skinny behind what he's doing. Almost certainly, if he had sentenced Donald Trump to custody and tried to incarcerate him, that sentence would have been suspended. And even if he imposed the conditions that we traditionally associate with a criminal conviction, fines or a term of probation and supervised release following pronouncement of sentence, those two would have been reversed on appeal by an appellate court because they would have impinged on the prerogatives of the presidency. Whether we like it or not, I think that's how the law would look. So by issuing this clean situation where he will have his opportunity to lay out Donald Trump's conduct, to condemn it, and to explain precisely why he isn't receiving a custodial sentence, I think this is Merchan trying to do the best that he can in a difficult situation. And, you know, not for nothing, one of Donald Trump's lawyers in this proceeding will be the #2 official at the Justice Department. This is an opportunity to give the public and those lawyers an abject lesson in the rule of law and accountability, even though Donald Trump won't face what you would, and I too, frankly, would term an appropriate sort of punishment for this conviction.
Okay, but Joyce, not all cases are the same. I get it. Justice, though, supposed to be blind. How does this outcome, the only one that we have seen in terms of accountability in a criminal case for Donald Trump, not spin in the face of the grand jury that returned the original indictment, not spin in the face of the jurors that sat in service for 7 weeks anonymously, I would remind people, because of fears of harm to them by, you know, Trump and his supporters. How does this not mean then, or send a message, that you could buy your way back into the Oval Office so that you can obtain some measure of immunity? I know that Merchan rejected this president-elect immunity, but post-SCOTUS, post this idea that you can have this immunity, why would any criminal not want to just buy their way, a la Elon Musk, into the Oval Office so that they could do things without impunity, with impunity?
Yeah, I think the argument that you make is a powerful one, right? Anyone with the ability to inch their way into the Oval Office can apparently avoid virtually all accountability for criminal conduct. And it's worth remembering that the charges in this case, the Manhattan DA's case, involve conduct that predates the presidency. So this is the cleanest case. This is a case where Trump doesn't have any form of presidential immunity. The judge has rejected his bogus argument that because some of that conduct continued into the White House, he somehow is able to back bless it. But that clearly didn't work with Judge Merchan or the New York courts. And the problem, as you say, is what does this teach us about the rule of law going forward? And it's hard to avoid this negative message that Donald Trump has outrun justice. So I think in the final moments that are left to him, Judge Merchan is doing the best he can in a really terrible situation that none of us wanted to be in, to try to at least send home a message that there is still, if not accountability for Donald Trump, accountability for others, that the criminal justice system can be used in virtually all cases. Look, I know neither one of us finds that to be completely satisfying, and I think we need to acknowledge that that's a problem here. But this is a judge who I think still has another couple of tricks up his sleeve.
We're going to talk about accountability for others in a moment, so just hang out, because I'm going to talk with you in just a minute about Trump's Day One initiatives. So President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to enact sweeping changes on the first day of his presidency, including pardoning most, if not all, of the January 6th insurrectionists.
We're going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases, yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
More than 1,500 have been charged. More than 1,200 have been convicted or have pleaded guilty. But these numbers, they pale in comparison to another mass pardoning. President Andrew Johnson pardoned the entire Confederacy. First, it was just former Confederates who owned less than $20,000 in property. That's nearly $500,000 today, provided that they took an oath of loyalty to the Union. Wealthy Confederate officials had to make a direct appeal to the president. Johnson personally granted all of them, more than 13,000 pardon petitions. Then finally, on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1868, Johnson proclaimed the following: unconditionally and without reservation, a full pardon and amnesty for the offense of treason against the United States or of adhering to their enemies during the late Civil War, with restoration of all rights, privileges, and immunities under the Constitution and the laws. Thus, the Confederates found all of their rights restored without requiring a loyalty oath. Convicted felons have their right to vote and to hold office revoked. But due to Johnson's unconditional pardon, these former Confederates were free to remake the South in their image. They enacted laws to erase Reconstruction reforms, and they utilized violence and intimidation to terrorize black communities, leaving ramifications still felt by this generation more than 150 years later. Joyce Vance, back with me now. So, Joyce, we know what happened post-Reconstruction. You did a fantastic article for the Brennan Center within which you wrote the January 6th defendants' return would give a boost to the white supremacists and domestic terror groups. Many of them participated in before they overran the Capitol, and it would severely dampen the deterrent effect of our laws against future aggression. We talked about accountability for others, Joyce, just a minute ago. Talk about this accountability for January 6th insurrectionists.
It all bleeds together, right? We are now facing a moment where a president who has outrun accountability for the insurrection would, in effect, pardon the people who made that insurrection possible. And Trump has said he intends to issue these pardons. He said he might do it within the first minutes of his new administration. So, Katie, you and I both know how the pardon process works. Typically, people file applications. They're considered individually. People who are violent, who are an ongoing threat to the community, aren't up for pardons. And Trump is really turning that broad power that he has on its head by considering restoring these people who, as you pointed out in earlier cases, these are people who've never shown any accountability for their conduct, who will be as, if not more dangerous upon their return, throwing them back out into communities, which is really the ultimate gesture of thumbing Trump's nose at the rule of law.
Joyce, do you consider whether or not we're going to see a pardon for seditious insurrectionists? There are those that were charged with sedition. Not sure Donald Trump was willing to go that far, but with Trump, all bets are off, right?
It's not at all clear. His transition team has not ruled out pardons for the Oath Keepers or members of other groups that openly engaged in sedition, were convicted of those crimes, probably the zenith of the risk of violence to the country on January 6th. You know, if Trump were to do that, the question we have to ask is, would that be a bridge too far for some Republicans? I think memories in this country are short. The horror and the outrage that we seemed to experience as a unified country on January 6th, that has subsided. These sorts of pardons might do something to resurrect that. But at this point, post-election, it might be too little too late.
You know, Joyce, before I have to let you go, the oath of office for the President of the United States talks about defending and protecting the Constitution of the United States. What are the remaining safeguards? What do we have left for the guardrails? Your piece for the Brennan Center talks about how this was all for personal gain. This January 6th, these insurrectionists, they came to that Capitol. They did it for him being Donald Trump. This would have benefited him only, and yet he's about to raise his right hand and swear that he's going to defend and protect the U.S. Constitution again.
Well, and I expect he will do that unironically, with a sense that protecting the Constitution means protecting Donald Trump. But look, most of the guardrails are broken, right? Congress is now in Donald Trump's hands. He has a majority in both houses, albeit a slim one. And the question is whether new guardrails will re-emerge. I teach and I study in the area of democratic institutions. You know, nature abhors a vacuum. And I think something that we have to do as Americans is figure out how to rebuild the guardrails, whether that means looking ahead to the midterm elections and returning majorities in both bodies in Congress that would provide a balance to this increasingly imperial presidency, or whether some form of public voice will emerge that can check Trump. It's clear that we need new guardrails.
Well, Joyce, at the end of your Substacks and at the end of your piece, you talked about how we're in it together. I'm in this with you, and everybody else is tuning in, so I appreciate you. Always happy New Year, my friend.